And we are back. Greetings, Ranger fans, and welcome to our reactions to Database Rangers Power Reviews. Feel free to share the link if you're able. We have just now gone live. I'm just making sure to share a few things on my end because it's been a crazy day. I have just gotten off of a big marathon live stream of Power Rangers Turbo, raising funds for Fair Fight, the New Georgia project. So things ran a little long due to technical difficulties there, so I apologize that we are starting off so late this evening. I know it's only the second week of doing this. So a little amusing on that front. I'm keeping an eye over here on the chat. Yeah, it's been a wild couple weeks getting everything together, but we've raised a lot of good money. I'm hoping that you guys will tune in again tomorrow. We've actually been doing a little discussions, and it looks like tomorrow we may be changing up channels again. We'll be posting that information, but you should see our next live stream actually tomorrow on Morphin Legacy's channel, so we'll be putting that information out quickly. They've got fantastic reach, so we're hoping to get a nice wide audience for that. And SDA should still be dropping by, so don't be too worried. So, all that said, thank you, Ranger fans, for joining us for our second installment in this 100-week journey through Database Rangers Power Reviews. This next episode is sort of where the show is starting to settle in a little bit after its initial introduction. I'll try and not mess around with my volumes too much so that you guys can still hear me over the video. I didn't have too much time to transition from the last stream, but I see that we've got our viewers here. I'm just letting people know that we are now live on the social medias, and in just one more moment we will be kicking this off. And we are live. So, let's get it ready. This is the second episode of Database Rangers Power Reviews, where we take a look at episode 19 of Power Rangers Samurai Origins, Part 1. Let's take a look.
Last time on Power Review, we met our host, the obsessive-compulsive, over-analytical fanboy known as...
Back when I gave the announcer an actual, like, lines to describe things.
And his scientific and technical consultant, Dr. K.
The neuropsychological evaluation of Database Rangers...
This was when everything was still very new, obviously.
The team unites, left him baffled and confused.
And this is before I really got my pattern down for how I was doing the last times, before we really had a ton of plot to cover. But I did really want to still have that be a strong recurring thing.
Origin. That word carries a lot of weight.
This also leans into what I was talking about earlier about with my inspiration from Browse Hell High, trying to make sure that that everything kind of fit and made sense, and was supported by scholarliness.
In the case of Power Rangers, we have a unique opportunity to
it looks
enjoy
like
a new origin story with every new season.
Looks like the chat box might have actually finally popped up for a moment and then vanished. But yeah, this was one where the aspect ratio was a little messed up in those early episodes. Yeah, we can see that this one's a little bit more in a 4:3 rather than 16:9. And a big part of that was because I was still getting the hang of how things exported, honestly. Where I was struggling to get these out, one every week, and I was like not sweating the small stuff. And so I don't think I even really noticed what was happening with that weird aspect ratio change. This whole monologue from Dr. K was also just sort of the first big, like, technobabble unload that I inflicted upon MJ. But it is based upon a real book. The whole origin of superhero. Oh, do I have it here? I meant to double check to see if I had it on hand. And actually, I think I might. Give me a moment. As we are analyzing through here, I know I shouldn't be off screen on my own stream. Oh, I don't have it here. Oh, I thought I did. Sorry, I thought I had it right here. I think I must have it elsewhere. But yeah, Origin of Superhero is absolutely a book that I own and that I had been reading going into this, and so I wanted to have that, you know, that well-sourced background when discussing the show. And yeah, this was when we first saw the those introductory narrations, which made no sense whatsoever, especially considering it didn't exist in the first episode where we could really use it. And here comes my first big setup gag that ends up having a big payoff later. This was this little joke here is just fun. Dun dun dun. The Wii. And it was just like a joke about getting clenched about the idea of it was just a crack joke. And leaning into and then that super dramatic moment of the Wii really does end up paying off big time. 48 episodes later, or 47 episodes later when we get to episode 49, where obviously the Wii becomes a very big plot point for the show. And that ended up being really more of a fortuitous coincidence, where I didn't have it planned that way from the beginning. I didn't intend for the Wii to be as important as it became, but I figured it out fairly early on, when I was sort of roughing out what the plot line was going to be. I knew that I wanted there to be a piece of technology that would be used to establish the connection to the multiverse. In the early stages of the show, there was going to be a running gag about characters coming in and out of Database Ranger's closet, including not only Dr. K, but in addition to that, we were also going to be introducing an alpha unit and have my other friends play other characters from the show as well. And when I realized that wasn't really practical, I grew away from that. But when that was the initial plot line, where it was going to be guest Power Ranger characters all the time, played by my friends, Database Ranger's closet was going to be a TARDIS. And there was going to be at the end he would have to go into the TARDIS to go save the world. And it grew away from that as I decided to lean more into the Dr. K character, not long after this episode, because we decided to really rely on Dr. K as being just such a standout. MJ's connection to Dr. K was just so strong, and we really wanted to lean into that. Because back before RPM even premiered, I had seen the Dr. K character in that leaked trailer for RPM, and I knew that MJ was going to love that character instantly. And I was correct. And there was just a tremendous connection to that. It's just like the look was right, the tone was right, the humor was right, and it was something really special that we didn't want to let go from the series. So that was why I decided to emphasize on it so much. And yeah, see, there is that question of why was the Team United the only episode that didn't have the narration. I guess it just didn't feel like including it in the first episode. Not really sure. It's very strange.
Was raised to follow in his father's footsteps, and yet,
I'm really supposed to lead a team?
Not to mention the timeline issues that emerge here.
Yeah, there's so many
For
questions
the
about
first time, places
Jaden's
climactic
connection
battles
to
between
being
good
a
and evil
hereditary
during the
Red
actual
Ranger
timeline of the
that
series proper. I mean,
really
look at the
doesn't
map.
fit within the context of the
Assuming
larger
this series takes place
franchise.
in 2011 and Jaden is, I don't know, 6 in the flashback?
Yeah.
That would place this battle around 1999, late 1998.
Late 1998.
Which means that it either took place during Countdown to Destruction when, I'll admit, there were hordes of alien monsters invading, and I'm sure no one noticed a few extra demons fighting an extra Ranger team.
I love
or
that.
During Lost Galaxy.
I didn't even realize that at the time that when I was writing episode 2 before I had plotted out a lot of the series.
Well played, Sam. Well played.
That this actually did lean into my larger story. With there being other events during Countdown to Destruction that were important to the Power Rangers universe. So that really did lean into that well. There's a lot of little things I sort of found along the way and latched onto and grabbed onto that I did not really realize would be something that I'd be able to use so much.
That would be silly.
And yeah, that is me leaning into my knowledge that Lauren was about to be introduced.
Once again,
As, of course.
I am the Red Ranger.
I am the Red Ranger. And again, another Countdown to Destruction reference. I really did just lean into my love for Power Rangers in space at this time. Which you know should have been a little bit of a clue where the show was going. But obviously at this time, there was no indication that there was a larger story to be had. So I really did try and lean into this being a standard, you know, that guy with the glasses, Channel Awesome style of review show to lull the audience into that false sense of security while laying down the groundwork for who the characters were, how they interacted, and little bits of foreshadowing, so when I did start to lean into the more plot-heavy elements of the series, they would feel natural. They would feel as though they were growing out of something that had a strong foundation.
And he also shows the others the power of teamwork by defeating
as I said last week, November 20th, 1998 is treated as a very important moment in the franchise, and it's an important moment for the story of Database Rangers Power Reviews.
You know, as nice as it is to finally be getting some exposition on these points, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that these characters, who have ostensibly been training for this moment,
there's just so many things about Power Rangers Samurai that's very strange.
Awesome but impractical hockey pads of justice. The Rangers are fray, and we get to see the individual holding Zords.
I love my enthusiasm in these early episodes as well, where Database is just reveling in having Power Rangers to review.
They see into my nightmares.
Freakishly large eyes as a gag again. You know, I'm finding my humor, I'm finding my tone, and I'm figuring out how to edit the show as well. You know, getting the different downloads and making them work. Yeah, amusingly enough, the first commentary has already been copyright claimed, just like the first episode was, which is fine. I'm not expecting to really make money off this show, outside of the occasional generous Patreon contributor. Omega Res pointing out those folding cosmic swords are great. Yeah, those sort of Mega Mode sabers, or I believe they were the Mega Sabers. I believe they were called. Not to be confused with the Samurai Sabers, or Samurai Spin Swords. Sorry.
Apart from Kevin, we don't actually hear any of our new Rangers.
Yeah, the use of saber as a term in Power Rangers is not well handled, generally speaking, because I've actually fed saber. I know what a saber is, and usually saber is used to describe a katana or any sword in Power Rangers, which is amazing.
Largely irrelevant. It's what they do with their lives now that matters.
Yeah.
Plus, everybody's still selling into their roles.
So.
Some of the deliveries are still pretty stiff, so this is kind of a case of less is more. And finally, we get to
and in little bits, I'm also just kind of leaning into
design and ties in nicely.
establishing what the rules are of Power Rangers. That's sort of one of my big goals with reviewing this episode. And using that to sort of define the show.
Overall,
what this show
this episode is a little rough around the edges, and a few points don't make a whole lot of sense, but we do get an effective and functionally complete origin story. So,
What about part 2?
wait, what? To be continued.
And the one and only time that I actually have the announcer say "to be continued," which is hilarious.
Last time.
Oh, don't want to send off another one quite yet. There we go. So yeah, you can see there are so many different elements of the show that were still being worked out, right down to the editing. I hadn't gotten aspect ratios quite down yet. I hadn't really figured out encoding either to the full extent. It was very tricky. So I was still working that out. And yes, no, they never explained what happened to the horse. Which is just, you can just generate horses and cars out of nowhere for no apparent reason. But yes, Samurai was a very interesting episode. It was a very interesting season to explore through Power Reviews, because it was handled very differently from past seasons. It was a reintroduction to the show. There was this weird kind of mesh of leaning on nostalgia while also very faithfully adapting, well, I don't know if faithful is necessarily the right word, but very directly adapting Shinkanger that presented many issues with the series. And it is interesting looking on it. And saying, bring back the narrator for the final episode. I mean, I'm not giving away any spoilers right now for what these final episodes of Power Reviews are going to be. We do have 10 episodes left to go. There are various little things that I do plan to cover. And who knows, maybe these revisits will help me find other things to, integrate into the scripts that I haven't shot yet. There are definitely plenty of scripts that are still, that still have some malleability left in them with these final 10 episodes. 91 is completely shot, but 92 honestly still needs some work to be ready. But I do so love that the of the things that were introduced in this episode, we got to see, we were setting out the rules of Power Rangers for people not tremendously familiar with the franchise, reaffirming that Dr. K is a recurring character, even if it is just a one-off little pair of gags, because Dr. K hadn't really become the co-star of the show yet. It was really just more of a cameo-style character at this stage. How it was doing the narrations hadn't really been established, because there wasn't really that much to recap at that point. And then as I got farther into the series, there was just far too much for the narrator to describe. So we had to lean more into clips as we went farther through the series. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else in the chat has any questions regarding these early episodes. But yes, and of course the introduction of the Wii, as I said before, was really a fantastic Chekhov's gun. Along with, mentioning Countdown Destruction in this first little side analysis when I really start to dig into the timeline of the show, which also becomes very important later on. So while this didn't fully... the show hadn't fully taken shape at this point. There were little elements that still don't quite mesh with things that happened later, which fits in character with how Database is handling things, since he's still editing the show in universe before it gets passed off entirely to the Squee controlling it, which is a whole different element. You could see that there were things that were going to become part of the identity of the show that were leaking in there before I even knew they were going to be part of the show. My sense of humor, my areas of focus, really did sort of dictate the way the show was going to be, even if all those little aspects of the story hadn't really been established yet. And then Jenny is hoping that for the charity stream that hopefully we reach Countdown Destruction. I hope so as well. We're raising a lot of funds for a good cause through those, so that would be fantastic. And then discussion on symbol power, connecting it to the morphing grid. Maybe the sentient force of the morphing grid might create the symbol power horses. It's hard to say. Now, as of here, was Database planned to be the Phantom? Yes. Database Ranger was always planned to be the Phantom Ranger before I even shot the first episode. I knew that I wanted to have some sort of story. I didn't know that I wanted it to be as serialized as it ended up becoming. But I knew I wanted to have some sort of story. I knew I wanted to have some sort of little twist. And I knew that twist was going to be that Database was the Phantom Ranger. Because I was going to have all these different characters as Power Ranger characters. And I wanted the final twist to be that he was one too. And I couldn't think of a better one than the Phantom Ranger. So that was always planned. That was always part of the series. Oh yes, the writer log that I really want to do another one of those. I really do want to do a writer log for Build. I've been so overwhelmed for these last several years and I haven't been able to get to it because I do love Kamen Rider Build. It's a fantastic series and I do want to give it some praise. It's just a matter of finding the time, especially now that I'm a teacher and now that I'm about to become a father. And it's crazy to think that when I do finally make it to the 100th one of these streams, I'm going to have a little toddler running around, I'm sure. So much of life has changed since Power Review started. In these first couple episodes, I was still selling knives for a living. That was my job. That was my source of income. That was all I had going right there. And I started doing this because I needed something else going on creatively to keep me centered and focused and driven, because my life was feeling very much like I was drifting. I didn't have a good sense of direction, and by directing my passions into this show, my passion for this franchise that I grew up with, and through being creative and producing videos and writing and animating and editing and performing and directing, all these different things that I had spent so many different parts of my life doing, getting to explore them through this show really did have a very positive impact on my life and on my mental health, as much as it's also worn it very thin. So if there are no other questions for tonight, I know that this one was a little quick, a little short. But you know what? We've only been going for 23 minutes. I do like to keep these at about half an hour, but this was also a very quick episode. But yeah, feel free to keep the questions coming. I know I've got another big live stream tomorrow, but I'm happy to address these. But yeah, it's crazy that this episode was only 12 minutes and 35 seconds after the first one was about 18. And most modern Power Reviews episodes are more in the 22-minute mark. And that really speaks to the fact that I wasn't really working to try and have these big, longer episodes. I was just trying to hook people in with these little bite-sized chunks. So it's crazy to think that later episodes were more than twice as long as this, especially those big finales. And I'm almost certain that the big finale episodes of the entire series are going to be big long haul episodes. I still haven't cracked a half an hour yet on any individual episode, but I feel like it's going to come close with some of those final episodes. There's just so much that's going to be happening to tie off the story. And I'm looking forward to it. What is the shortest episode of DRPR? That would probably be episode 52, I'm willing to bet. The Robo Night Before Christmas, because that one I put together in a weekend. That was so fast that I put that one together. And it was all in verse, too. So that was a very fast one. I'm looking forward to that. Apparently only the last hour and a half of Turbo's Day 1 was saved. I don't know what to think of that. I'm going to leave that for a tomorrow Jake problem. And hope that it will resolve itself somehow. But yeah, tomorrow we'll be continuing our big charity live stream to raise funds for Georgia. I know that's only relevant for this live stream and won't be something to be preserved for posterity as far as these as commentaries. But for those of you who can be involved, please by all means do attend and donate if you can, and volunteer if you can for Fair Fight as well as the New Georgia Project, and any candidates that you support. Just because you're out of state doesn't mean you can't still lend a hand. People in Georgia need assistance because the whole country's watching them right now, and as best as we can support them, we should to the best of our abilities. So, yeah, that was again just digging into the origins of Power Reviews, the origins of Samurai. It's still so bizarre to me that episode was aired at the end of the season. Such a weird scheduling snafu. But there were a lot of weird things with Samurai, and I look forward to further discussing them as we go through the rest of these commentaries. By the way, please let me know if my volume levels were a little bit better this time around. I heard some commentary that it was hard to hear me over the sound of the episode itself. So hopefully this made it a little smoother on that front. Maybe I'll mess around with my setup. I didn't have too much time today because I was doing the other live stream for so long. Oh wow, episode 4 is another really short one, and that's another holiday episode. Oh, I'm looking forward to episode 4. That's a fun one. Alright, so thank you, Ranger fans, again for joining me for these little walks down memory lane. I'm looking forward to really exploring it more. Okay, glad to hear the audio was better this time around. Fantastic. And you'll start to see, as I lay down more and more groundwork for the show that it eventually developed into. It's very much kind of a night and day comparing episode 2 to episode 90. And we'll see how episodes 91 and 92 are when we get to those. But, oh, hey Dad. What do you know? Somebody's up late. Good to see you. My father, ladies and gentlemen, in the chat. Oh, question is, where was I the Phantom? Where I was the Phantom of the Opera in the Halloween episode, which was, like I said, always in the plan. There were definitely a lot of things, a lot of elements of year 1 and of year 0 and year 1 were planned out before I even started filming. And by the time I finished year 0, I basically knew how year 3 would end. Year 2 I had to kind of fill in a little bit, but year 3 I knew how it was going to end by the time I got there. Okay, and then episode 32 was when I started to go over 20 minutes. That makes sense because I was starting to really kick off the story right at the end of that. So that makes sense. That was when a lot of elements were really starting to come together. Alright. So here we are. I think we're coming up on the end of this. Again, glad to hear that you guys are able to hear me clearly and are able to enjoy these commentaries. I'm going to keep working to improve them from week to week. Hopefully next week I won't have to worry about also doing a marathon live stream right beforehand. But, as always, keep some goodness in your hearts. Keep doing good work out there. If there's something you love, try and see if you can use it to make a positive impact in your life, like this show did for mine. And I look forward to really going through more of that later. So, until next time, Ranger fans, farewell, and let the power protect you.